You may find it surprising to know that as a child of the 80s, I loved video games. And I bet you didn't see that as the sermon opener for this, my favorite spiritual season of Advent. I loved video games. And my parents forbid video games in the house, despite my incessant whining about wanting an Atari or a PlayStation. These are the consoles back in the 80s. So I used to secretly ride on my little blue Schwinn bicycle down to the video store, remember those? With my bestie and neighbor, Rosie. And we'd play Pac-Man on the store's arcade machine for hours. Here my poor parents thought I was out getting fresh air and exercise, just stuffing blue Jolly Ranchers in my face, playing Pac-Man for hours. So at my now husband's, my husband Jason and I's first Christmas together, this was back in 2001, he thought it would be so cute and dear to finally buy me that PlayStation video game console. And he bought me all my favorite 1980s video games to go with it. So sweet. What that poor man had no idea about was the Pandora's box that he just opened. What he did not know about me then, he knows this about me now, is that I, your pastor, am like an angry, irrational dog with a bone when it comes to games. Just games in general. I am not proud of this. I am working on this. And it took about 2 months for Jason to then stage the 5-alarm intervention, which began with something like, "We can't go on like this." And it was only a few months later that I was asking friends to please take the PlayStation, keep it for the sake of my relationship and just basic livelihood. I have lost control of myself. All right, so out it went. So now, as I prepared for this season of Advent in the ways that I do, pulling my favorite books about the season off of the bookshelves and reading through them, one of them brought all of these memories back into my mind. It's a book called The Art of Stillness by Pico Iyer, where he writes, "The idea of stillness is as universal as the law of gravity. That's why wise souls from every tradition have spoken of it." And he quotes the 17th century French mathematician and philosopher Pascal, who wrote, "All the unhappiness of men arises from one simple fact, that they cannot sit quietly in their chamber." Or, as Iyer goes on to note, as they sometimes say around Kyoto, don't just do something, sit there. And this passage suddenly blasts me back to my season of maniacal video game playing, specifically a particular game that I'm about to get to that prompted the "we can't go on like this." It wasn't from the stack of my tried and true 80s games like Pac-Man, but rather was a new game released in the year 2000 that Jason, having gotten a shining recommendation from the video game salesperson, also purchased it for me. And it's called The Sims. Do any of you know about The Sims? You do. Oh, okay. All right. So The Sims is a social simulation game, and it's made up of these people called Sims, living their little sim lives out in these houses or domestic settings. And the point of this maddening game is for you, the player, to oversee and manage their lives. From housework to care of children to being the children, there are many sims, to getting ready for work to personal care. And it's what gamers call open-ended gameplay, meaning that players set their own objectives and pace. What's the goal? You want your sims to survive. You don't want your sims to die. But even better, you want them to thrive in some way. Achieve some kind of balance doing all the things that these little sims do. And there are a myriad of ways for this to happen. You decide. And yet, despite you, the holy thou you, being able to control their decisions and manage their little sim lives, they also have an intelligence of their own. And sometimes those sims go rogue on you. For example, a sim who has just enough time to eat and shower before the carpool comes, things you've instructed them to do, may decide to suddenly just sit down and stare mindlessly at the floor or stop dead in their tracks and just stare out the window. And if you don't notice this happening because you have other sims to tend to, the chaos ensues. You have to keep an eye on your sims 24/7. And one of the main contributors to the chaos is the Sims' pesky need for rest and stillness and sleep. Oh, their pesky needs for these things. Sims come with energy bars that either slowly or rapidly get depleted depending on what you ask them to do. If you don't sit them down or lay them down or let them stare out the window or at the floor, they will literally collapse or fall and hurt themselves, or God forbid you have them in the swimming pool. They could drown. Again, you don't want to kill your sim, because the game is over when you kill the sims. I'll simply round out this story by telling you that the 24/7 care of my sims and my utter exhaustion and anxiety at keeping an eye on them was what prompted me to, maybe I'm not alone, unload the PlayStation and say that, alas, the Sims most valiantly bested me. And this game is so fascinating, right? I haven't thought about the Sims in so long. It is fascinating. And here's something even more fascinating, my friends. The Sims is one of the best-selling video games of all time. I mean, my favorite bit of acclaim for The Sims is this: do not miss this game. Run, do not walk, and set aside lots of time. I delight in turning to pop culture, things that go viral, crazes and fads, to give me clues, for that is what they are. Clues about who we, the great we, as a people are, and what our deepest longings are. It's a kind of collective pulse. We could find several nuggets of wisdom about who we are when we consider the Sims' success. For today, in this season of Advent, I want to home in on the stopping and sitting part, the thing which, without, the Sims die. For despite all the instructions and mandates from Almighty Me, those Sims would continue to change their minds and exercise their right to stillness and rest. And you know by now that I could preach about rest and Sabbath for the rest of my days and be a happy minister. This is not one of those sermons, although, friends, I always pray from the bottom of my heart that you and I know rest as a blessed, liberating birthright, one worth fighting for ourselves and our fellows in the world. But this morning, I would like us all to consider the quality of stillness that asks us to be neither here nor there, or what the Advent season calls the sacred and mysterious wait. The thing those darn Sims kept asking for, and I rarely wanted to give it. Holy wait. Neither here nor there is what is called liminality, and we've heard that word earlier on a joy card, right? About waiting for the birth. Liminality. Limen means threshold in Latin, threshold, like the one you cross in a doorway, where just for a brief moment you are neither here nor there. And most often they define life's rites of passage, right? Like waiting for a baby or becoming a new parent or grandparent, right? Sometimes these rites of passage are ritualized in some way, but most often they're not. Marriages, birth, as I've said, moving out of your parents' house as a young person. There's a liminal moment of life. Midlife, retirement, death, loss. These are all of life's liminal times, and there are so many others. You are still who you were, but you aren't. You are embodying a new way of being, and you aren't fully that either. You are betwixt and between, both, neither. That is a liminal time of life. And these liminal states of life and being, they are strange and they are disorienting. Time feels suspended, and we must look for the wisdom teachings that tell us about these ebbs and flows of life, and about change and in-betweenness, and about slowing down, the wisdom to still one's self when it's time to wait in the neither here nor there, like our loons, right? It is no coincidence, my friends, that the two most holy times of a Christian liturgical calendar are Advent, leading up to Christmas, and Lent, leading up to Easter. One makes way for birth and the other death. Both mark a series of weeks where the mandate is what? To slow down, prepare, rest, wait, lined up by design with the ancient pagan calendar days that precede the winter solstice and the spring equinox, right? Both of these wheel turnings honor the liminality of seasonal change. We feel that from fall to winter, from winter to spring. These don't just happen, right? We are between and betwixt. You are in both seasons. You are in neither. You sway back and forth between each around those turnings, right? And these threshold times, which mirror nature's own mysterious wonder, instruct us to find meaning in that betwixt and between, the neither here nor there, so that we might what? Shed and grow and be transformed as our sacred earth and its creatures are. That is the invitation. The great Franciscan priest and teacher, Father Richard Rohr, talks about liminality this way. Get there often and stay as long as you can by whatever means possible, he says. It's the realm where God can best get at us because our false certitudes are finally out of the way. He goes on to say, this is the sacred space where the old world is able to fall apart and a bigger world is revealed. Matt Meyer talked about that last week. If we don't encounter liminal space in our lives, Father Richard writes, we start idealizing normalcy. Oh, I know that one. The threshold is God's waiting room. Here we are taught openness and patience as we come to expect an appointment with the divine doctor. Those are Father Richard Rohr's words. Preach them. Come to expect an appointment with the divine doctor. We are in a liminal time of the year, yes. We are also in a collective time of liminality, as a religion, as a civilization. This is known as being in a liminal epoch. I don't think any one of us would argue about that. You can feel it. The continuity of tradition, how we live together, what we thought we knew, it's all being disrupted. And yes, even dying away. Yes. And the uncertainty about the future, oh, it's so very present. Where are we going? Who are we becoming? How now shall we live? We ask. We don't know. And this not knowing is at times wonderful, for we trust that good and timely transformation must be on the horizon, something new. And it is extraordinarily anxiety-producing. And we're, for sure, not great at standing still in the neither here nor there space. Some of us feel, understandably so bereft about the dying away of what it used to be, that we find ourselves having a really hard time letting go. That is real. Others want to blot everything that is past and never go back, never turn back. Okay. Some of us feel so impatient and anxious about sitting in the unknown that we want to speed ahead, clock out plans immediately, get out of the wait. I would say all of us are dancing between all of those in some way or another. We, the collective we, are not so dissimilar from the Israelites, lost in the wilderness, alternating between begging Moses to go back to the comforts of Egypt. Who cares if we were slaves? We at least had a routine that we were used to. And also demanding, like children in a car on a road trip, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How quickly can we move forward? They had to spend 40 years in that liminal lost place so that they could move forward. That's the wisdom teaching in the Hebrew Bible. And it is still applicable. The great church consultant, Susan Beaumont, she's also a stunning spiritual leader. She wrote in her book, which is titled How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going. It is my favorite book ever. Church is full of liminal experiences. Seasons where something is ended, but a new thing has not yet begun. We know that. We can feel it. We're in it, right? Seasons where watching and waiting can be difficult. Over-planning, she says, is futile. And it simply isn't helpful to pretend that we understand what happens next. Liminal seasons are challenging, disorienting, unsettling, she writes. We strive to move forward with purpose and certainty. Instead, we feel as though we are trudging through mud. Okay. And yet, she says, these seasons are also exciting and innovative. The promise of a new beginning unleashes creative energy, potential, passion. And she says that all truly great innovations are incubated in liminality. I believe that to my core, that all truly great innovations, personal and in community, are incubated in liminality. But we must be wise. We must be wise. We must still ourselves, despite its spiritual challenges and despite those anxieties. And we must, like those Israelites or those Sims players, put our faith in the life-giving weight, in the life-giving weight. In the weeks ahead, it's already started, you will be inundated with the complete opposite of what this season is all about. I sense it is why we find it so often utterly exhausting, because it's unnatural. That's why. You will be told to speed up. You will be told to buy and buy and buy and consume and consume and consume and be everything for everybody and fill your schedules up to the brim, because it is time to celebrate and be merry. Blast the lights, crank the music, and do and do and do. But friends, choose carefully what you pay attention to and what you heed. Don't let young, maniacal Sophia get control of the joystick and instruct you to never stop. Resist. Sims, go rogue, lest you collapse. Upon careful inspection, the season is also trying to teach us all about slow and still and silence and wait and prepare. It's everywhere. Nature is giving us this instruction. Our pagan ancestors are whispering this to us. You have it deep in your bones too, this wisdom. And this church, rooted in ancient Christian wisdom, is also showing us how to cultivate stillness at this blessed neither here nor there place, which we call Advent and winter solstice. Take it. Eat it up. Bathe in it. And as we close some of our time together here, I want to return to our poet's threshold prayer, because that is what it is. It is a threshold prayer. Antonio Machado. Is my soul asleep? He asks. Is my soul asleep? Have those beehives that work in the night stopped? And the water wheel of thought, is it going around now, cups empty, carrying only shadows? No, my soul is not asleep. It is awake, wide awake, It neither sleeps nor dreams, but watches far off things and listens at the shores of great silence. May we all gather close these days like our loons, be those people who look east as we in this church still ourselves and watch for far off things. Listen and rest at the shores of the great silence together. Always, always together, my friends. Always together. That is my prayer for us all this Advent season. May it be so, and amen.